If you work through all of these prompts, I guarantee you will have a better understanding of yourself. If you've seen my previous video on journaling prompts, then you would know that the archetypes are this idea that across different cultures and time periods, there are universal recurring motifs and character traits that you can find. Because the archetypes are meant to provide insight into human behavior and actions, if you journal in a way that's directly inspired by them, that'll help you have a better understanding of the narrative of your own life and your own understanding of yourself. For clarification, I'm not saying that you should identify fully with one of these archetypes, but I'm saying that each of them can be a helpful tool to help you understand the role that you play within your own life in different spheres. So let's begin. So the Maiden, also known as the Puella or the Eternal Girl, is the archetype represented by a young woman who's typically characterized by her innocence, her purity, and her vulnerability. So she's known as the Eternal Girl because it's a character that kind of resists growing up. So this archetype is represented by perpetual youthfulness. First question that you have to answer is, what's something that you are naive about? So again, the Puella is often characterized by her innocence and her lack of understanding and naivete of the world. So she views life with a sense of wonder and curiosity, which isn't tainted by the complexities of adult life because again, she's the girl that hasn't grown up yet. The second question is, describe a time in your life where your innocence and your passivity was challenged. How did you respond and how do you wish you had responded? The Puella archetype has a tendency towards depending on other people to support her. So a negative aspect of this character is that because she's so passive, she's kind of just waiting for events to happen instead of actively taking steps. The third question is, what dreams and ideals do you have that others might see as unrealistic? So the Puella is characterized by a romantic and dreamy disposition. She tends to be very idealistic because her head is always in the clouds and she's thinking about love and adventure and a perfect world. This can lead to a lack of practical grounding in her life. The fourth question is, in what ways do you feel vulnerable and how do you seek protection? She's often depicted as vulnerable and in need of protection. So this purity isn't just like a physical purity, it's more an emotional, spiritual purity. The fifth question is, reflect on a moment in your life where you felt a pure sense of wonder and curiosity. What brought about that feeling? So the Puella represents potential and the possibility of a better future. Because she's like on the cusp of adulthood, there's so many possibilities and opportunities that lie ahead of her. And so this potential is often untapped and waiting for the right circumstances to bloom. So the Temptress uses charm and allure to influence and manipulate other people, and they often embody seduction and desire. The first question is, write about a time in your life where you used charm or allure to influence a situation. So the Temptress possesses a very natural charisma and allure that can captivate others and the people around them. So this ability to charm others isn't just in their physical appearance, but it's also in their wit, their grace, and the way they carry themselves. And they use these qualities to gain favor, sway people's opinions, and achieve desired outcomes. The second question is, how do you understand the role of seduction in your life? So the Temptress understands the power of using seduction and desire as a way to achieve her goals. She's aware of the impact of her presence and how she can affect strong emotions in other people. This mastery of desire is what allows the Temptress to navigate both personal and societal interactions with a keen sense of control. The third question is, reflect on the ethical implications of manipulation. So while the Temptress can use manipulation as a tool, she's also aware of its ethical boundaries. So she recognizes the potential harm of her actions, and she often grapples with where to draw the line. This ethical awareness often prompts self-reflection and the consequences of her actions and the moral responsibility that she holds. The next question is, describe a time or situation where you were tempted by something that you know wasn't good for you. The Temptress is not only a source of temptation for others, but she also experiences temptations herself. She often encounters situations or people which she knows aren't good for her. This can highlight the internal conflict and the seductive pool of your desires, which might lead you to risky or detrimental decisions. The fifth question is, how do you navigate relationships where power dynamics are at play? The Temptress is often very good at navigating these different power dynamics in a relationship. She's often able to position herself in a way that maximizes her value. She has a keen sense of observation and strategic thinking, which allows her to maintain control over the situation and over other people. So the orphan doesn't actually have to be an orphan in the literal sense, it could just mean an outsider. This is the person that's seeking belonging and identity. So the first question is, describe a time when you felt like an outsider and what brought about that feeling. How do you cope with these feelings? The orphan frequently sees themselves as the outsider and different from those around them. This outsider status can actually make them more observant of the people and the things around them, and they can see things in a clearer light. The second question is, how do you define your identity in a way that's separate from your family and your community? So a central aspect of the orphan's journey is they're looking for their sense of identity and their belonging in the world. So they often struggle with existential questions like, who am I? Or where do I belong? And their quests can lead them to explore various different roles and identities until they find a sense of themselves. The third question is, what steps have you taken to find a sense of belonging? Despite their independence, the orphan often feels that they want a really deep sense of desire and belonging, and they often go to great lengths to search for that. This desire to feel accepted is often the driving force behind their actions, and they yearn for a place or a group where they can feel valued. So the next question is, do you think that you have a tendency to push others away? What other factors do you think are influencing your ability to connect with others on a deep level? Due to their past experiences with abandonment, the orphan might struggle with trust issues, so this can make them act guarded or wary of forming true relationships. The final question is, write about a relationship that made you feel valued and loved. So the orphan's own experiences with hardship and suffering can often make them the most empathetic and compassionate people, and they truly feel a deep sense of longing and compassion for their loved ones. The Destroyer represents chaos, the dark side of transformation, and acts as a catalyst for change. The Destroyer is often the antagonist in film, TV, and literature. They act as a catalyst for the events of the story to unfold. The first question is, write about a situation where you felt like a force of destruction or chaos. So the Destroyer thrives in chaos, and they bring it with them wherever they go. This destruction can be physical, emotional, or societal, and challenges established norms and structures. The second question is, how do you deal with your impulsive feelings? The Destroyer is often driven by this strong, impulsive feeling of destruction, and these impulses can manifest themselves in very different ways, and it can be directed towards themselves or to others. The third question is, reflect on a time when something had to be destroyed for personal growth. The primary role of the Destroyer archetype is that they are the catalyst for change. They break down the old systems, beliefs, and patterns, and they make way for new growth and transformation. So this process, though it's often very painful, is essential for growth and new potential. The fourth question is, how do you view the relationship between destruction and creation in your own life? So embedded deep within the destructive force of the Destroyer is the potential for change and new growth. They often hold a lot of creative potential, and by clearing away the old, they can pave the way for a new innovation and ideas. The fifth question is, describe a personal transformation that was preceded by a period of chaos or upheaval. So again, because the Destroyer represents the dark side of transformation, destruction is always a precursor to birth. This dark aspect can be frightening, but it's often necessary for rebirth. The martyr is someone that's willing to suffer or sacrifice themselves for a cause or for the better good. The first question is, write about a time where you sacrificed something for the greater good. So the martyr is defined by their willingness to sacrifice their personal desires, their comfort, or even their own well-being for the sake of the greater good. There's a deep sense of altruism, and there's a commitment to a cause and purpose beyond themselves. The second question is, how do you cope with suffering and hardships in your life? So the martyr, because they're so self-sacrificial, they often have remarkable endurance and resilience in the face of suffering and hardships. They often draw strength from their convictions and the belief that their suffering has a greater, meaningful purpose. So this inner strength is what allows them to keep going when others might have given up. The third question is, reflect on a cause that you are willing to suffer for. What makes it worth the sacrifice? The martyr is driven by a deep conviction and an unwavering dedication to the cause that they believe so profoundly in. This sense of purpose is what gives them the strength to endure this suffering, and they see their sacrifice as necessary steps towards achieving a greater good or fulfilling a higher calling. The fourth question is, describe a moment where you felt like you were bearing the burden of other people's expectations. So martyrs often find themselves bearing the weight of others' expectations and responsibilities. They might be more inclined to take on more than their fair share of burdens because they're so driven by their sense of duty and their desire to alleviate the suffering of other people. But this can lead to them feeling overwhelmed and underappreciated. The fifth question is, how do you find the balance between self-sacrifice and self-care? So the martyr archetype often struggles with balancing self-sacrifice and self-care. Because they're so naturally inclined to put others first, they have to recognize the importance of their own well-being. There needs to be an ongoing effort to find the perfect harmony between serving others, but also maintaining personal boundaries, health, and happiness. The scapegoat often takes the blame or bears the burden of others' sins and faults, and this can lead to their sacrifice or their suffering. The first question is, write about a time in your life where you felt unfairly blamed for something. So the scapegoat often finds themselves being unfairly blamed for problems or for failures. This characteristic highlights the role that they have in absorbing the negative emotions and the fault of other people, even if they're not responsible for them. They often also become a target of other people's larger frustrations and faults. The second question is, how do you handle situations where you do have to bear the burden of other people's faults? So scapegoats might handle these situations by internalizing the blame and attempting to resolve the issues for other people, but this might also lead to them struggling with feelings of injustice. The third question is, reflect on the concept of sacrifice. How do you distinguish between justified and unjustified sacrifices? So the scapegoat is often in a sacrificial role, where their suffering is seen as a means to an end. They have to navigate the complex dynamics of sacrifice and learn to distinguish between sacrifices that are necessary and those that are unfairly imposed. The fourth question is, describe a moment where you stood up for yourself in the face of unfair treatment. Despite their role, scapegoats often possess resilience and the capacity to assert their freedom. This characteristic is about personal strength and being able to identify when you do need to stand up for yourself in the face of personal or unfair treatment. There needs to be courage and there needs to be self-worth, and you need to be able to challenge the narrative that unjustly placed blame on you. The fifth question is, how do you cope with feelings of guilt or responsibility for things that are beyond your control? The scapegoat needs to be able to develop strategies to manage their feelings. They can do this through self-reflection, seeking support, and understanding the true source of blame. So the warrior embodies strength, commitment, and the bravery and perseverance to fight and protect other people. The first question is, write about a cause or a person that you would fight for without hesitation. What drives this commitment? A key aspect of the warrior archetype is that they're protectors and they protect other people. They're willing to put themselves in dangerous situations for the good of others and to safeguard them. The next question is, write about a time where your aggressive actions led to unintended negative consequences. What did you learn from this experience? The downside of the warrior is that they can be overly aggressive. This aggressiveness can also alienate and isolate other people. They can create enemies rather than protecting the vulnerable. The third question is, write about the role of duty and honor in your life. How do these principles guide your actions? The warrior is driven by a deep sense of duty and honor, and they feel a strong obligation to protect and defend, and they adhere to a very strong personal or societal ethical code. The next question is, reflect on the moral and ethical code that you live by. How does it shape your actions and interactions with the world around you? So because the warrior often adheres to this very strict ethical and moral code, this is oftentimes the primary driver for their actions and their decisions. This code can be personal, it can be cultural, it can be societal, or it can be part of a larger organization or tradition. The final question is, how do you recover from setbacks and defeats? What strategies do you use to maintain your resilience? So warriors are very resilient, and they're capable of recovering very quickly from setbacks, injuries, hardships, and defeats. And this resilience can be both physical and emotional, and it allows them to continue to persevere and fight despite these hardships. So the healer archetype is characterized by healing, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. This character often possesses special knowledge or abilities that helps them achieve their purpose. The first question is, write about a time where you helped someone physically, emotionally, or spiritually. So the healer is characterized by their very deep compassion and empathy, which allows them to provide meaningful assistance to other people in need. They have a very natural inclination to help others recover from physical wounds, emotional wounds, or spiritual crises. The second question is, how do you take care of your own healing and well-being? So healers often understand the importance of self-care and maintaining their own well-being. In contrast to the martyr, they recognize that in order to effectively heal other people, you also have to prioritize your own health, balance, and inner peace. The third question is, reflect on the role of forgiveness in healing. How has that played out in your own life? Forgiveness is a central aspect to the healer's approach to healing. They recognize that holding onto resentment or grudges can often impede and hinder the healing process. This ability to forgive and let go of past hurts is what allows them to walk the path towards emotional freedom, both for themselves and for those around them. The fourth question is, describe a time in your life where you felt a deep sense of connection with someone you healed. Healers often form deep, empathetic connections with the people that they heal, and this profound sense of understanding and shared experiences is what allows them to tune into the needs of other people and offer personalized and impacted support. So this really characterizes the importance of genuine human connection. The fifth question is, what knowledge or abilities do you possess that can aid you in the healing process? The knowledge that the healer possesses, which helps them in healing, can often be medical, it can be psychological insight, spiritual, or alternative healing practices. This expertise is often combined with a natural sense of intuition, and it allows them to diagnose and heal other people effectively. So the shapeshifter is characterized by ambiguity, change, and uncertainty, and their unpredictable nature is what causes uncertainty to the protagonist. The first question is, write about a time in your life where you felt misunderstood or perceived differently by different people. So the shapeshifter is often characterized by ambiguity, fluidity, and they can be perceived in different ways by different people. They adapt their persona to fit the expectations of these different people. This character is often able to navigate complex social dynamics, but it can also lead to misunderstandings and misperceptions of you as a person. The second question is, how do you navigate these changes in your identity or roles in different contexts? The shapeshifter possesses a really remarkable ability to adapt their identity and their roles to these different societal contexts. This adaptability can often work to their advantage because they're able to mold themselves to whatever society expects of them, and this can allow them to achieve their goals in various contexts. They're very skilled at reading the room, and they can often adjust their behavior in order to fit the needs of the moment. The third question is, reflect on a time in your life where you acted unpredictably. How did it affect you? Shapeshifters are familiar with unpredictability, both in themselves or in other people. They understand that change is constant, and they can handle surprises and sudden shifts in behavior in other people. This allows them to remain composed, and they can respond quickly in the face of unpredictability and use this to their advantage when necessary. The fourth question is, describe a situation where you had to adapt quickly to new circumstances. The shapeshifter often excels in situations which require rapid adaptation, and they thrive in environments of change and uncertainty, which allows them to quickly assess new circumstances and alter their approach to navigating them successfully. The fifth question is, how do you balance consistency and flexibility in your personality and in your actions? While the shapeshifters are flexible, they often do feel the need to maintain a core sense of self. Balancing consistency and flexibility is what allows the shapeshifter to both take advantage of situations when they arise while still staying true to their values and their identity. This characteristic is what allows them to remain authentic to themselves while evolving with the changing world. I hope you found these journaling prompts useful, work through them in your own time, and identify the role that the archetypes play in your own life. And if you're interested in more videos about journaling or keeping a journal that you